Welcome into another edition of the Purple-Painted Roundtable podcast presented to you by Ebony Bird and Fansided, the official Baltimore Ravens platform of Fansided. Here with Joe Schiller and Chris Schisler, our site experts. I myself am Jake McDonnell. All of our social media tabs on Twitter at Ebony_Bird. Chris's Twitter handle is at FootballMan58. Joe's is Joe Schiller with 2 R's. I'm Jay McDonnell 95, and this is coming to you through the Charm City Birdwatch Podcast Network. You can follow us on Twitter at CharmCityBW and CharmCityBirdwatch.com. So, fellas, we sit here recording this podcast on a Wednesday night. We've had about 2 weeks of practice and training camp for the Ravens now, and it's about time to suit up and put the pads on against another team, and the Washington Redskins are that team to come in here on Thursday night at M&T Bank Stadium starting at 7:30. We're going to have previews up. All those should be coming today on Ebony Bird. I'll have a preview up on Charm City Birdwatch as well. The game's going to air on WBAL, both on the radio and on television, and also I believe where I'm at too, up on Central PA, will be getting it on NBC as well. I will be at WBAL tomorrow night during the game, and then you can also stream it on the Baltimore Ravens website and on 98 Rocks. So, fellas, before we talk about the game, some interesting notes about not necessarily the injuries, but about John Harbaugh. I think Joe brought this up in the group chat yesterday at a press conference. A bunch of reporters were, it was previously, Harbaugh said himself he was going to kind of tone down the injury talk a little bit after all the injuries were suffered, with Crockett Gilmore, Kenneth Dixon, everybody that suffered the season-ending injuries, and then we have Joe Flacco with a bum back. So just a lot going on, and he basically said he was going to tone down the injury talk, and I believe it was Jerry Coleman of 105.7, the fan, who asked him about rookie cornerback Marlon Humphrey, who's been out for 5 days it's been upwards, trending more towards a week with an undisclosed injury. We don't know what it is, and when Coleman asked for an update, Harbaugh said it's not really for you to know, is it? This kind of struck me the wrong way because the reporters are just doing their job, and I think it was kind of immature on Harbaugh's part, because I understand he's frustrated. People are arguing that he could be on the hot seat, missing the playoffs 3 out of 4 years now, and certainly the way things are shaping up right now, it's going to be difficult to get back to the postseason this year. But the fans deserve to know what's going on with the team, and this is our first-round pick, and we've already lost 2 cornerbacks. So the way that he answered the question kind of struck me the wrong way. Joe, I'll go to you first, since you wanted to bring up this topic. What did you think from this?
Yeah, so I was watching the press conference live, and I was a little struck back, too, because, from Coleman's point, it's a fair question. Humphrey is our first-round pick and cornerback, and undisclosed injury, we've seen him out. I think at the open practice he was sprinting but wasn't in pads, and they haven't really given much update on him at all. And from what Harbaugh said, I can't see him probably playing on Thursday. But like you said, I was just a little struck back because from what I've seen in the past, obviously, I'm not a beat reporter, but John Harbaugh seems pretty calm and collected when he's talking to the media. And I get that he's had a lot of questions every day about Flacco and a lot of other players, but it seems like he's kind of not reaching a breaking point, but he's been on edge the past couple of days. Not the John Harbaugh we've seen.
Well, I don't like it because the reporters are just doing his job, and his job is to inform the fans. So it's really for Jerry Coleman to know. I will say that I listen to 105.7 a lot. Jerry Coleman takes pride in the fact that he's the one that always irks people with his questions. He's a hard-hitting reporter guy. I will say this. Harbaugh needs to take a chill pill because it's only going to get worse when you have 7 players out for the year already. You keep getting injuries. It seems like every day we have an injury. Our injury report is ridiculous. You're going to get a lot of questions about it. You need to be prepared for that. And, yeah, you have really no need to tell the reporters anything. You kind of have an obligation to at least treat them professionally. And Bill Parcells got away with it. Bill Belichick gets away with it. I don't know. I kind of think nowadays, if you want to act like Bill Belichick, you need Bill Belichick's resume. Otherwise, you're not on to Cincinnati. We will be in a few weeks, but it's ridiculous.
I'm okay if he doesn't want to tell us how long a player is going to be out, but at least tell us what the injury is. Because that, when they're not even willing to tell us what the injury is, that gives me an unsettling feeling personally.
Yeah, and we've seen in the past with Perryman when he said he was out with some kind of lingering injuries his rookie year, and it ended up being the whole season. So I mean, obviously we don't think that's probably the case with Humphrey, but from what's happened before, it has to make you wonder. And it's not just Humphrey too; it's Austin Howard, who they signed like 5 days ago, still hasn't taken the field, and they give him a good chunk of money. And Harbaugh said it's up to the trainers, but I mean, it's just a little concerning that our presumable starting right tackle on the season isn't out on the field right now. So
I don't like paying Austin Howard and then not knowing if he's able to go. I don't like that at all. We paid him like he was ready to go, like he's going to be a piece for not just now but the future. I don't want to get Austin Howard's best play in 2018. I want it now because James Hurst is a scary possibility. So it's up to the trainers thing. Maybe that's true, but it is a very annoying answer.
And it'll certainly be interesting to watch because Austin Howard did undergo a shoulder surgery in the offseason. Now, speaking of Austin Howard signing, the Ravens were already, pretty much up against the cap, the bottom towards the league in terms of available money, and now they're dead last. They have about a little over $5 million in cap space, which is the least amount in the NFL. So which brings the question, if they're going to make more moves, there's still rumors that they could go after a center like Nick Mangold. I really don't think there'd be another position around the team that they would go after if they were going to make another move. But it really does bring up, since they're so tight up against the cap, what they're going to do as far as signing people. And if they do sign people, you would expect them to either make a trade or maybe cut somebody. And I'm kind of going through the roster today. And before all the cornerbacks suffered injuries, I said to myself, maybe they'd be willing to trade like a Kennedy or a Webb, but they're not going to do that anymore because of how thin they are at the cornerback position. I was thinking some possibilities for cutting players. You have like Zadarius Smith, maybe Chris Matthews, maybe like a backup quarterback they just signed a couple weeks ago. Maybe Anthony Levine, who's another like safety, but he plays a lot of special teams, so I don't think they do that. So I think it's more likely if they do go out and make another move and add somebody that they would restructure a veteran contract to push some of that money back. Chris, I'll go to you. What do you think they're going to do with being so tight up against the cap and needing possibly another offensive lineman, especially if Ryan Jensen's injury turns out to be something serious?
I'll put it to you this way. I don't think there's going to be much moves happening. I wouldn't be shocked if Mangold happened. Other than that, I'm not expecting anything. If we sign anybody of note, it has to come with a move attached, a cut or a trade, like you said. I have really no confidence that another move would even make us better at this point, because at this point, the people that are available for a reason. I mean, if you made a move and got a Colin Kaepernick, yeah, we could go through all that drama. But, I'm not sure at this point it makes any sense. We're already preseason tomorrow. The timing really is something you needed to do sooner rather than later. So I think you're swinging with Mallet. I think Austin Howard was your big signing. Bisciotti said if we had one more bullet, it was going to the offensive line. So I think they're done. I think there might be a minor move or two, but I think the move that's really going to move the needle isn't happening.
I'll go to Joe to you next, but one in the possibility that they do add Nick Mangold, if you do that, it'd have to be a short-term thing, because you're also, if you add him, you're looking at, him, Marshall Yanda, and Austin Howard, all guys Howard's 30, but the other guys are well above. That's like a pretty old side of the offensive line, whereas the left side would be young.
Mangold would be a rental. We're not signing Nick Mangold to be the future. I mean, we're not even sure he can play a full season, but if Ryan Jensen's got an injury problem and you're not that confident in Jensen in the first place, bringing in Mangold can't hurt if you can do it for cheap, because he's not Nick Mangold, the perennial Pro Bowler. He's Nick Mangold, free agent in August.
Right. I mean, and if they do add them, I'm completely agreeing that it's short term. I'm just wondering if they do it, you have, Howard with the shoulder, Yanda with another shoulder, and then Mangold with, he was banged up last year, and they're on the wrong side of 30. So if that scenario did happen, the right side of the line would certainly be older and more susceptible to injury. So Joe, where do you stand on the salary cap problems?
Like Chris said, I don't think they're going to make any big moves. If they do, it'd probably be on the offensive line. I thought it was a little interesting today is Zuda got released from the 49ers today, and I don't think that would be a good move for the Ravens, because I think Jensen's an upgrade over him. I think the Ravens got rid of Zuda for a reason because, I mean, they really just didn't like what he did last season. I mean, he was one of the only healthy offensive line, but he was poor play at best. I was shocked that he made the Pro Bowl somehow. But
that was because nobody wanted to play the Pro Bowl. How many people have to go down for Jeremy Zuta to make a Pro Bowl?
Exactly. When you tell me Pro Bowl, I just don't think of Jeremy Zuta. But I think if they would bring him in, maybe it'd be a backup center at best. I don't know. I can't really see much happening. Maybe that at best for Mangold, but I don't really see Kaepernick happening after all they've gone through with that. So I think if anything, maybe something on the offensive line.
And of course, now that we've discussed all that, it's time to break down the first preseason game of the season with the Washington Redskins coming to town tomorrow night at M&T Bank Stadium. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. It's that time of year, the first preseason game. Normally, starters would play about a series or two, but with all the injuries the Ravens have suffered, I don't think we're going to see a lot of veterans, at least. Maybe some of the rookies, maybe. I'd say, I don't even know if we're going to see half our starters. It's really hard to tell with the situation the team finds themselves in. Are any of you guys going to the game before we dive into it?
No, I won't be there.
I'm not spending money on preseason. Are you kidding me?
Well, even for those who are going, if there are any more injuries, they will have to be a couple beers in by then. If I were going, I'd be a couple beers in by the time I even got there. So I guess I have a couple things to write down here just of what to expect. Like I said, not a lot of veterans. I think we're going to see a lot of different returners get a bunch of chances because we have no idea who's going to win those jobs. And then the big question is, how long is Ryan Mallett going to stay in? I've heard reports saying that they want to give him close to a half, but he does need the reps. I do understand that he's not a really good starting quarterback option that has, consistent progress in the NFL with his starts. But even though he is our starting quarterback now, and with Flacco already out, how long or how wise is it to keep them in there longer than they need him to keep him in there?
I mean, I don't know. The thing is, the Ravens aren't really sure with Mallett in the first place, so I feel like they want to at least keep him out there for a half to see what he's got. But then, obviously, if something were to happen, Justin Vaughn's your next quarterback. But I've heard a lot of things saying that this could be Mallett's most important game of his career, which is really funny because this is the first preseason game. But, I mean, with Flacco out, and we don't really have a clear timetable for his return, I mean, Mallett is the next best guy. They chose not to sign Kaepernick. There really isn't anyone else in the free agent market they could go out and sign that could be a starting quarterback. So I would think they would at least keep him out there for half to see what he's got, because as much as we want Flacco to return, there's just no guarantee that's going to happen right now.
Well, here's my take on this. Caution is the word. You're looking at a preseason where everything's going wrong before we even play a snap. We have 7 players out for the year already. Joe Flacco's back is a very big concern. And Ryan Mallett's your starting quarterback right now. I'm not okay with Ryan Mallett getting hurt. I say you treat him like he's Joe Flacco. I say you give him a drive. If he does good, you get him out of there. If he doesn't, give him one more drive. If he doesn't do good, well, it's the first preseason game. There's next week. That's my kind of take on that. I don't want something to happen to Mallett because it is too late to make a change at quarterback. At this point, it's just we'd have to make a trade if we did anything at all because we chose not to do Kaepernick. The timing isn't right for a free agent, and none of the free agents are appealing. So Ryan Mallett gets hurt, you're in a world of trouble. I say you treat Ryan Mallett like he's Joe Flacco.
And then we get into the discussion of, of course, Mallett getting hurt. A big way to prevent that would be to wrap him in bubble wrap and pillows. But then another thing we could get into is, like I mentioned, the return game. Obviously, they went through the headaches of Devin Hester last year, and now we have Chris Moore and Michael Campanaro listed as our top 2 returners, Moore on kicks and Campanaro on punts. I don't expect them to play Campanaro just based off his injury history. I don't even know if I'd give him reps probably in the 3rd preseason game, if anything. But I kind of want to see what Tim White can do. We've heard about his athleticism. He's taken some reps at returner. And I also want to see Keenan Reynolds, having been a guy that's met Keenan in my past at my Barnstormers volunteer job last year during the summer when he came up for a game. So I kind of want to see Tim White and Keenan Reynolds get some reps and see what they can do in the return game.
Absolutely. I was such a huge Keenan Reynolds fan. I see a guy who, when he gets the ball in his hands, he can do something with it. The key is getting the ball in his hands, and he struggled last preseason, but wouldn't it be nice to see Keenan Reynolds get some shots at returner, because there's no guarantee that man makes this roster, and Tim White's in the same boat. Michael Campanaro, we know what he can do as a kick returner. I don't want to see the man made of glass break in the preseason. I'd like to give him at least a shot to get injured in the regular season. I'm sorry if that's my optimism level with Michael Campanaro. But Tim White, oh my goodness, he looks like a human highlight reel. I would really like to see us keep 7 wide receivers. That would include Keenan Reynolds and Tim White. But how depressing would it be if Tim White was finally that diamond in the rough, that guy who surprises everyone and becomes a really good wide receiver, and we cut him and he goes to Pittsburgh because they have to have every receiver in the league, and we have to deal with that again. I'm tired of other people having receivers. I don't see young elite receivers on this team, so I'm hoping desperately that either Keenan Reynolds, Tim White, or both, or even the guy from Ole Miss, Adebayo, I completely mispronounced that name, but I don't care. The thing is, I just want a receiver. I want a young receiver. Brashad Perryman hasn't been practicing, so my hopes are on Tim White. So during the preseason, I'm watching Tim White and Keenan Reynolds. I don't care about Michael Campanaro in the preseason. I know what he can do, and I know he's going to get hurt if he does it.
So up next, we're going to jump into some players to watch. On my list, we're going to just kind of go around in a circle. I do have, the 2 young wide receivers, like we were saying, Tim White out of Arizona State, and then Quincy Adebayo. If you kind of say Attaboy and add an O at the end, I believe that's the right way to pronunciate it, out of Mississippi. So I have those 2 guys to start, and I believe, with all the injury risk, I would assume that they would be getting a lot of reps tomorrow. So, Joe, I'll go to you first. Who is on your radar tomorrow night on the game?
So, obviously, Tim White. And I like Tim Williams on defense, too. We've seen a lot of him in camp, and he's really kind of, from what we've heard, outshined Tyus Bowser. I mean, it's just been practice, but we've heard that Bowser's had a little bit of trouble at the beginning of training camp, and Williams has seemed to be beating some really good offensive linemen in camp. I'm just interested to see what he's going to do against the Redskins backups, because, he was a first, second-round talent that dropped back because of off-the-field issues, and obviously Ozzie loves those Alabama players and couldn't pass on Tim Williams. On offensive side, I'm looking at 2 running backs. I'm really interested to see what Buck Allen's going to do. I feel like he definitely did fall out of favor with Dixon last year, but they've kept him around, and he seems to be kind of the next guy behind Terrence West. We know Woodhead's probably going to be the 3rd down back, but Buck Allen could definitely come in and be the second workhorse behind West. I'm also interested to see Taquan Mazzell, too, Smoke. They've talked a lot about him in camp. I don't know if he's the kind of workhorse like a West or I can't even think of, or Buck Allen, but he's kind of like a slippery guy like a Woodhead. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there, because the Ravens are good at finding undrafted players, and a lot of the focus has been on White and Adebayo. And I'm interested to see what Taquan Mazzell can do.
I want to see Ricky Ortiz and Lorenzo Taliaferro battle for the fullback position, because your offensive line is a troublesome situation, and your fullback is going to be important. You need a lead blocker. You need a pass protector. You need a guy who can take some of Kyle Juszczyk's receptions. You need a fullback, and I'd love it to be Taliaferro, because I see this power runner, and I see this guy who didn't work out at running back. I think, hey, at a fullback position, maybe he can do a little Mike Allstott impression. I like the idea of that. Ricky Ortiz is a really interesting rookie. I like what he brings to the table, and I don't know who's going to win the job, so that intrigues me. And I'll give you another 2, Chris Wormley and Bronson Kafusi, who I think have an opportunity to snag starting jobs at the defensive ends for your Baltimore Ravens. You look at Chris Wormley, hard-working pass rusher from Michigan, doesn't waste a lot of movement, really good at both stopping the run, and he'll replace Timmy Jernigan's 5 sacks per season. We're not worried about the inconsistency with Wormley and Kafusi. Just a huge, long athlete that is going to make a real impact when he's on there. And Carl Davis has looked good, although now he's banged up because everyone has to be banged up in Ravens training camp. But it's just the defensive line looks good. I'm really excited. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. I'm going to get into more of the defensive line in a minute, but I think if Ricky Ortiz can come on and make the team, he'll be a perfect guy to get in there once Taliaferro ends up on IR in Week 6 with a foot injury. But just to go back to the defensive line, Patrick Ricard, an undrafted defensive end out of Maine, apparently he's been having a really good camp. Maybe he could become like another Michael Pierce who has a strong camp and makes the 53-man roster after going undrafted. But you're right. Lots of defensive ends like Carl Davis and Konfusi. You also have Wormley, like you were saying. Konfusi, missed his rookie season with that broken ankle, which I actually witnessed when I was in camp for the one day. Carl Davis, I believe, also ended last season on IR. And then you have Brent Urban, who's projected on the first depth chart at least to be the starter. Hopefully he can come on after battling some injuries after battling some injuries early in his career. Another guy, aside, of course, it'll be interesting to see what Mallet does. And if Max Williams plays, it'll be interesting to see if he takes a hit to his knee, how he gets up from that. Because we still don't know what exactly the surgery was. But Kamalai Correa, who's expected to take the job from Zach Orr, the second linebacker job, I'd expect him to get a lot of time in the preseason, honestly, because they don't know what they have in him. Talked to the press last week saying that his adjustment to the NFL took a long time. Last year felt like he was getting hit in the head with a brick just of how rough the transition was, but says it's a lot slower this year. So I'm hoping he's right, and I'm hoping, he gets a chance and does well, because like I wrote this, I don't know if it was the one I wrote for my website or one that's getting posted tomorrow. I did write this after how disappointing watching the whole Arthur Brown second-round pick disaster went, where he barely saw the field. Correa, a guy that took in the second round last year, I'm hoping he pans out.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see if how long Mosley's in too, or even if he plays at all, because Correa will probably be the main signal caller on defense. It'll be kind of interesting to see how he handles that.
So up next, before we wrap things up here, once again, I'm Jake McDonnell 95 on Twitter, and again, you can follow us on Twitter at FootballMan58 for Chris, and Joe Schiller for Joe, and of course, Ebony_Bird under the Fansided network for all Baltimore Ravens coverage. So, top storylines going into the game. I have the first thing, no injuries, please, on my list. I guess really that's a top concern going into this game after all the suffering that Ravens fans and the team has gone through early in camp. Chris, what is another storyline that you have on your radar?
Well, for me, it's how good is the secondary and how deep is it? Because in the preseason, it's all about depth. You lost Kennedy, you lost Devon Young. You're not going to have Marlon Humphrey. So you're going to get to see some guys in the secondary have some huge opportunities. And, I mean, late in the game when you're like, I kind of want to go to bed because it's a preseason football and it's like just such a tease, that's something to look at. And another thing I would look at is, can an offensive lineman surprise you? Maybe it's Stefe Nimbat. Maybe it's Ryan Jensen just playing really well to start the game if he plays at all. Maybe it's, I don't know, it's the offensive line. I have a lot of doubt right now, so I want to see if somebody surprises me and says, you know what, maybe they're better than I thought they were. So that's the two things I'm looking at.
I'm interested to see how committed Marty Morningway is to the run game. I feel like even though it's a preseason game, the Ravens are going to want to try to get some kind of offensive game going and see if he really can commit to it, because we saw last year when Flacco throws the ball 600-700 times, this offense just isn't good. Flacco's not a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady who can win a game with his arm. Usually he needs a nice ground game with it, and with the Ravens having some questions at the running back position, I don't even know if Terrence West will play, but I'm interested to see how committed Marty Morningway is going to be this offense in the run game, because if they don't run the ball again this season, I mean, he's out. I mean, people were mad enough that he was brought back in the first place, and John Harbaugh said that Marty is committed to the run game, but I think we all want to see that before we believe it.
Yeah, you guys remember at the end of the Eagles game last year, that dumb interception that almost led to the Eagles winning that game? I literally think sometimes they need to have Greg Roman acting as like almost a hypnotist, like standing right next to Marty, just saying in his ear, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And Marty's just staying there, No, okay, run the ball. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Like,
hey, can I make my bold prediction? Greg Roman takes Marty Morningwig's job the same way Marty Morningwig took Mark Trestman's job. I have no faith in Morningwig. Harbaugh has fired 2 offensive coordinators when he has reached desperation levels. Marty Morningwig panics if you're 3 points behind, which is incredible because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, first quarter, 3 points behind. Let's throw it 50 times. Yeah, let's do that. I'm tired of it. Let's just make Greg Roman a legitimate offensive coordinator the offensive coordinator. We bring in Greg Roman. We act like he's going to save the day. But you know what? You're under the guy we have no confidence in. That makes sense, guys. That makes sense. Greg Roman's going to end up being the offensive coordinator because it's John Harbaugh's MO. He's overly loyal to a person who shouldn't have the job in the first place. He realizes that, and he makes the decision he doesn't want to make. It's going to happen again because Harbaugh's out if he lets Morningwig kill him. Morningwig was the rope. They gave him enough rope to strangle himself. They gave him enough rope to lose his job. And you know what? Morningwig could end up being the end of Harbaugh because Morningwig could be the end of this team. We just need an average offense. We don't need a good offense. We need an average offense, and we will win games. And people will say, oh, the Ravens are the most unentertaining team in football. But you know what? I'll take it because we will win games with this defense. Just get Morningwig out of there now.
What week do you think he gets fired then if you call that?
All right.
What week do you think he gets fired, Chris?
Oh, okay.
It could be early.
I'm gonna say week 4 after the Steelers.
That's bold.
That's a tough game then for.
It would be just like last year, early in the season, before you fall off the rails after the Redskins game. You know, you got the Jaguars in London, then you got Pittsburgh, Oakland. Things could get ugly early. I like our schedule. I think we're going to have to weather a storm. I don't think we're going to win all 4 of those games after Jacksonville. So, dude, we have to win early. If we even slip up, I wouldn't be shocked if we beat the Cleveland Browns in week 2 by like the most ugly score, like 3-0 or 9-6, like we did in Kansas City in that 2012 season. I wouldn't be shocked if we just said, nope, we're done with this. This isn't working. Run the ball. Greg Roman, get in there.
They always seem to have problems with the Browns. Like even the first game last season, they were down like 20-0 before they came back and won that game or something.
Well, we always have problems with the Bengals.
Yeah.
I mean, could we just beat our division opponents with a little less drama?
You know, I don't believe that the Ravens have beaten the Bengals in Cincinnati since 2011. I believe that was the last time they beat them there.
Yeah, Joe Flacco has like a terrible record against the Bengals. I think it's probably the worst team in the division he comes up against. They just always have his number. Crazy.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know why the Bengals have such a hold on him. Because if you watch the games, they really just play cover 2 and have a good defensive line. This is really the only reasons they win. I was at the 2014 season opener, and I was just shocked because all game long, they're just overloading the right side. So the end of the game, they come out in an empty set, and I look to the people around me. I say, we just lost. They said they haven't even snapped the ball yet. I was like, watch, we just lost. Sure enough, overload blitz to the right side. They've been doing it all game long, and we were in an empty set, so the ball had to come out quick with 5-man protection. And it's like we don't think when we play Marvin Lewis's Bengals. I do not get it. We do the dumbest things against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Did you guys see that?
I'm sorry.
Finish what you're saying.
I just don't understand why Mike Tomlin can't make a good decision against the Ravens, and we seem to beat Pittsburgh in these ridiculous fashions where Mike Tomlin goes for it on a 4th and 2 with Michael Vick as his quarterback or something like that. But against the Bengals, it's like John Harbaugh's just like, I don't know. What could we do? It's ridiculous.
Real quick, though, did you guys hear that Marvin Lewis is taking a leave of absence because he has, like, some medical emergency?
Oh, man.
Ankle.
I did not.
I heard that on the Fan this morning, I believe. I think it was the Norris and Long show. They were talking to somebody who was at Bengals camp, and he said that he's got, I think it was like, they were suspecting it was like a blood clot or something, but I think he's going to be fine, but he's going to miss some time. It's like a leave of absence.
I just saw a thing on Twitter I'm looking at, said he was back at practice today.
Okay, well then maybe it's not a big deal.
I don't know, but it could be something that goes into the regular season. You never know, but I mean, you never want to wish that on the coach, no matter what.
Hey, I like Marvin Lewis least of all, but I'm not going to wish any harm on anybody. I actually met Marvin Lewis when I was a 10-year-old kid. I saw him at an Applebee's. My grandparents and my parents were telling me I should go over there and say hi, to say, hey, I'm a big fan of them. So I go over to him and say, hey, thanks for the Super Bowl. It was really, really special, and like, I'm a really big fan. He says, kid, I don't know what you're talking about. And as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh no, that's him. And I was so bummed out, and I've hated him ever since. But even as much disdain as I have for the man, never wish harm on anybody.
Well, certainly with all the Bengals discussion when the Ravens open up the season against them on September 10th, we will have plenty to dive into. Once again, be on the lookout for this every Thursday, the Purple-Painted Roundtable podcast presented by Ebony Bird and Fansided. I'm Jake McDonnell. Once again, you can follow me on Twitter at jmcdonnell95, and you can follow Chris on Twitter at footballman58 and Joe on Twitter at Joe Schiller. Ebony_Bird on Twitter, Fansided, all that jazz on Twitter as well, and Charm City BW on Twitter. Once again, I'm Jake McDonnell. We'll join you next week for another edition of the Purple Painted Roundtable podcast. So for Chris and Joe, I'm Jake McDonnell. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, and hopefully even though the Ravens might not win, because we're not necessarily hoping for that in the preseason, hopefully we see some positive signs after what we've been through so far the past 2 weeks. So with that being said, enjoy the game, and we'll see you next week right here on Purple Painted Roundtable.